Yes, Sinners is that good. I am so happy that this movie exists. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my review, analysis, breakdown, sort of just talking about this fucking amazing movie starring Michael B. Jordan and directed and written by Ryan Coogler. Oh my god. Oh my god. Like, wow. 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 Like, I had just watched Nosferatu a few days before watching Sinners. So I've been on like a big vampire movie kick, especially recently. If you have watched over on the main channel, the Hunter the Parenting reactions that I've been doing, and like World of Darkness, the very classic and amazing TTRPG that more people should be into. But man, wow, 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 wow! This movie's a fucking amazing. From the acting to the set pieces, the sound design, the music, like the period piece authenticity, right? Of where you can see these little things in the background that like really sets it apart and tells you what time it's set in and where it is, right? How it's set in the deep south of the United States of America and the trauma that is about that and that place and that time and only being so many years after the Civil War and other things like that and things such as racism, class, and immigration and all of these other things, right? Because I want to get it right out of the gate. The vampires in this movie are a representation and symbolism of appropriation. It is an idea of stealing a person's lifeblood for their own. Right. And now, this is a very nuanced movie. This is not saying Irish people are bad, right? That is not what this movie is saying. But it is using the idea of immigration to tell a story about how culture can be stripped and sucked out of somebody to be used and abused and appropriated by another, right? Uh, Remick, I think that's his name, right? The Irish vampire. Like, you can just tell in the way that he talks and the way that he wants the music to be his so that his story can be told instead of it being something to where you can come together and celebrate other people's stories together. He is taking it into a very individualistic and parasitic state with wanting to have Sammy's ability to, transcend space and time and the like, which, good lord, this movie is just oozing with style. Michael B. Jordan as both Smoke and Stack with the Smokestack twins are, nah, we cousins. Like, that's awesome. That is awesome. I grew up in the South. Well, depends if you would count my state as the South. I would say that I was more in the North, but I was constantly surrounded with like the idea of Southern culture and Southern sounds and music and the like, right? The people that I grew up with for a long time were people that either held Southern values and the like, which, obviously you can see how kind of problematic that can be nowadays, but it wasn't, like a race thing back then. It was one of those things of like politeness and Southern hospitality and other things like that, which has its own issues of, you know, non genuineness and other things like that. Uh, but yeah, so whenever I heard this music in this film, despite the fact that I hadn't heard it very often as a kid, but I did hear it, it was fucking transcendental. In the juke scene where they are where Sammy begins playing I Lied to You and you start to understand what the fuck is actually going on and the guy in that fucking rock and roll outfit and the electric guitar comes in and he strums the electric guitar and you hear it in the bass, specifically with me my headphones, because I did not go and see this in theaters, even though I want to go see this in theaters, but hearing it in the bass of my headphones, holy shit, I ascended. And then hearing like the beat in the background from like the hip hop R&B and then the rap, and then seeing the people seeing the crip walking, and then also the dancing, and then also you see twerking, and then you also see like all sorts of other dancing, and then but it's not only black folks and their culture, and then the past and the present and the future of their culture and expression of music and the like, because black voices have always been such an influential part of music, right? Because music is one of the things that enlightens people. It lifts people up. And whenever you have such a history of trauma with them specifically, especially through the slave trade, you understand why music is important. But the thing with this movie is that it does not use that trauma as definition. It does not use that trauma to define these people. It allows it to give context, but it also allows them to move above that and still celebrate their culture and the absolutely amazing performances that these people give in this movie, with Sammy, with the pianist. I freaking forget his name. I'm so bad with names. Michael B. Jordan with Smoke and Stack, and how they kind of relate into all of this, and what they are, obviously, because they're the ones that like got together the juke and everything, and the woman who knew everything about vampires, right? And explained to them everything, but then also Remick, uh, his actor, and then obviously Cornbread's actor, and then the husband of the lady, her and his actor and everything. This is just such a phenomenal movie. And yes, there are some people out there who are like, "Oh, it's woke. Oh, it's not white. Oh, fuck you, whatever." Like, I can tell from an outside perspective, as somebody who isn't being shown the culture that is related to me, unless you wanted to be very like anthropological or whatever, and be like, oh, we all came from Africa, blah 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 blah. Um, which, yes, but obviously there is context and setting and history and specific history to certain peoples and the like that make this more impactful to others, right? Like, there is the viewpoint from people who are non-Southern and just lovers of music and vampire movies. Then there are people who are people from the South. And then there are people who grew up during this time or know about it. And then there's black people who this movie was made for. And you can just tell, just by the soul and the wit and the pure authenticity of the writing and the tightness of what it's trying to do, and you can appreciate that and you can understand that. And as somebody who fits three of those categories, right? Somebody who knows the history of this time, somebody who loves vampire movies, somebody who has a bit of cultural southernness in him, and also loves music. Now, while I am no Anthony Fontana, that's his name, right? Fucking bald guy. I'm sorry. Right, when it comes like to analyzing music, but I am the kind of person who will love and listen to anything and knows and understands the importance of music to people. Music is revolutionary, right? And haha, yes, this is me talking about revolution. Um, but yes, it is revolutionary. We sometimes forget, because of the society that we live in, where it sanitizes music. It sanitizes and markets and makes commerce out of music, that we need to understand how important music truly is. It is uplifting. It is an expression of our stories, of our souls, of our want to be remembered and to be heard, but to also share. It is not the idea of drowning out others and to only be raised up as ourselves in an individualistic sense, of where only us as a singular unit, as a person matters, but as a community, as a group that matters, of sharing that music. And that's what's important. And obviously, while we're on this little tangent of music, you can see where a lot of artists, specifically within, actually, ironically, the rap industry, but also within the like rock, and I would also, yeah, you could also say hip hop, definitely hip hop actually, where like pop music, where these genres of music were once created as expressions that were different from the contemporary time to send a message, to share with people, such as rock and metal and the like, which were also connected to black voices, rap and, rhythm and rhyme and poetry, right? Rap, rhyme, and poetry, and saying of stories and, their struggles and the like, and spreading that. But then over time, these stories, these genres of music that were so culturally and communally like important to people began to be not only sanitized and neutered, but became commerce for people, right? To sell a certain idea of rap or hip hop or rock and the like, where it is only the person saying it and you are buying it. You are not being shared it with you. You're not being shared these stories. You are having it fed to you. And obviously, you can talk about the cultural things that influence this and the like. But that is for a completely different video. This is a movie about sinners. Which, yes, it is related. But back to sinners. The vampires in this movie, I fucking love. I adore these vampires. I like how kind of classical they are, right? Of garlic, of silver, um, of needing to be invited into a home and the like. That is very classical monster sort of thing. And it is the way that the movie is shot leads these ideas into your head and understanding what's going on. Because earlier in the film, one of the ladies, I forget her name, I won't eventually because I'm going to be rewatching this movie more, walks in normally, right? Other people come and go as they please. But one of the very symbolic things about the vampires needing to be let in is manufactured consent. The idea of them literally social engineering and manufacturing consent to let them in to then feed and violate these people is so symbolic and so important, and just shows what the movies and these vampires are supposed to represent, right? It is the idea of thievery, it is the idea of colonialism, it is the idea of a molestation of culture and people and themselves for your own gain as opposed to others, because vampires are not monsters in the way that zombies are monsters, right? They are not the way that the beast in the woods is, right? Where you can take these ideas that are very basic, right? Just, oh, monster that's scary, like slashers or whatever, that are stripped away of their symbolism of the other, or the fear of the unknown and other things like that. Vampires very specifically are parasites. They are the concept of using others to keep themselves alive. And that is why so often you see vampires being aristocrats, of being of being, CEOs or high society people and the like. And World of Darkness, if I can go into a little tangent, does this very well. You have the Ventru, you have the Zamitsi, you have like the Toreador and everything like that. Those three clans in specifically are the concept of using others as predation. Vampires as a whole use people as predation because they are predators, they are monsters. But very, very specifically, those three in particular, your aristocrat in the castle, your bourgeoisie sucker of souls of the proletariat, and your sexual fiend that uses and attempts to, violate people without their consent for their own gain. Right. Now, that's not to say that, well, that's what the third one usually is, but you can see the symbolism in there as well as because as a quick side tangent, Toreador, their whole thing of what they're supposed to represent is the pretty vampire, but also like the sex vampire sort of thing. Anyway, like that is obviously something you need to be very careful with. But this movie does it well because it is not only showing how it is not one group of people that are vampires. It's not Irish people that are vampires, which can be very dangerous, right? And saying that your bigotry is justified because you are willing to show them as only monsters. No, this monster in particular just so happens to be from this place, but uses his own culture as an excuse, despite the fact that him and also the black folks within this movie share so much in common, right, with discrimination. Now, not as much as slavery, because Irish slavery wasn't as big as, the entire pandemic of transatlantic African slave trade. But they were heavily, like bigoted against. They were very heavily mistreated and harassed and the like. Remember, one of the things that you used to see everywhere before proper segregation happened and the definitions of white really were set in stone is it was colored and Irish. It was nationality and ethnicity and race tied together as an idea, because obviously you have to remember the cultural context of the time about how the English were very influential and they were struggling against the Irish people at that time, and other things along those lines. That it makes sense, and also just the negative stereotypes that were beginning to be formed around Irish people. So you understand that that is not what this movie is saying. It is not saying that all Irish people are bad. It is somebody that is using stuff that has happened to them personally as an excuse to then predate on other people, along with all the other messages and themes that this movie is saying. Because it is not just this one guy. He turns clan members into people who steal from others instead of just being bigoted, right? Almost in like this class way, right? Of the vampires representing society, of becoming one with the fold and allowing yourself to suck the blood of other people because it benefits you and that collective instead of working together as a collective. And you see this because every type of person that was in that juke ends up becoming a vampire, right? Everyone that didn't leave, everyone that was told to leave out of fear, which is also symbolic, ends up becoming one with the fold of the vampires and following in the footsteps of Remake. And that is, God, this fucking movie, man. This movie is just astounding. Go watch it. Buy it on Blu-ray. Rewatch it, watch it and rewatch it. Go listen to the soundtrack and everything like that. Good Lord, this movie is amazing. I hope Ryan Coogler does more horror movies like this. I do not want a sequel to Sinners whatsoever, but I would not be opposed to him doing more vampire flicks or doing more, horror, traditional horror monster flicks, and showing what these horror monsters are supposed to be instead of being like these sanitized, oh, they're just scary sort of things. So, yeah, go watch it. Go do all that. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon, I have a Cash App, I have memberships down below, and a link to the main channel. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.